Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin our look at supply and demand with the law of demand. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be taking these two parts of the market transaction, the ideas of supply and demand, and we're going to focus only on the consumer side right now to start. Why? Because this is really the one that everybody is more used to doing as someone who is a buyer and a consumer of goods and services. What is demand? There is a specific definition for demand, and it has to fit these three items. One, ability. Two, willingness. And three, desire to buy various quantities of goods and services at various prices. You must have ability, you must have willingness, you must have desire. So when we take a look at something like ability. If somebody is homeless, we're not going to say, okay, well, you're in the market for a car or a house or high ticket items. You're in the market for very basic necessities that meet those lower materialist needs. Okay. So make sure that you have the ability to get something to put something as in demand. Number two, willingness. You might have, um, hundreds of thousands. Let's just say you have the ability to access hundreds of thousands of dollars through a loan. Um, sure, maybe you would go buy a super nice car. I think that's a Bugatti, and maybe, but like uh, maybe you'd rather have a reasonable house though for that price. So you may not be willing to spend that money, even though you have it wouldn't be necessarily willing to spend that money on a really nice car and you go out and you buy a modest house for the same price. And finally, desire. You have to actually want to do it. So, for instance, there are some people that are, you know, doing concerts and all that kind of thing. And, if I had the money and I had the ability and I had you know, even if the willingness, I just don't like Taylor Swift. So I would never go to one of her concerts at all, unless it was to release a pack of wolves on everybody in the crowd. All right. So you have to have willingness, you have to have ability, you have to have desire for demand to actually take place. Now, this is a demand curve. We've seen these things before. Sloping demand curve. Now, what we're going to look at today is movement on this curve. All right. Movement on the curve. And the movement is based on an inverse relationship, meaning as one of these variables goes up, the other one will actually go down. And this kind of makes sense. Think of yourself as a consumer. Price of an item goes up, the quantity you are going to desire of that item is actually going to drop. At the same time, price of an item goes down, the quantity you're going to want of that item is actually going to go up. All right. So in this inverse relationship, price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. In this relationship that's inverse, price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. One thing we always want to do when we're talking about supply and demand, always start with the price. Because when the price goes up and down, the incentive is set, and then all of a sudden quantity is going to actually change. And since we're talking about demand, we're talking about quantity demanded here. Okay. So for instance, if something's at $5, then quantity demanded is going to be around 7. When that price actually drops down to $4, quantity demanded is going to go up. It's going to go up to around 11 or 12. Price drops to $3, quantity demanded goes up to 15. Price drops to $2, quantity demanded goes up to 20. Price drops to a buck, quantity demanded goes up to 29. And this is just simple, the idea of incentives. Price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Okay. Now, this is called the law of demand. The idea that when the price goes up, quantity demanded will drop, or the price goes down, quantity demanded will go up. The people will simply buy more of a product when the price of it drops down. There's your incentive right there. Price goes down, I want more of it. Okay. Now, once again, just a reminder, always start with the price. Okay, the price has shifted. What happens to everything else? Okay. And what we're doing here is we're actually trying to figure out what is the most somebody is willing to pay for an item. So when you get like milk, and we're going to say, okay, so how much milk can we like actually buy at a certain price? Well, the first thing you do is you ask the consumer, What is the most you're willing to pay? You don't ask them what they're willing to pay because consumers want to pay zero. What we want to ask them is is the most you're willing to pay, and they'll give you an answer, or you can look at their trends of how they shop. Um, and of course, 29 people said they would buy at $1, 20 people 2, 15 3, 12 4, 7 5. And then you can take all this information right here. And this is called a demand schedule. It just shows you how many people would purchase, in this case, a gallon of milk at what price. That stuff just transfers to this, and you got your simple demand curve right there. How many people are willing to buy at what price? And then from this, we can figure out which one of these actually gives us the most money at whatever price. Why is this demand curve sloping downwards? And in economics, there's a reason why as price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Now, you might say, duh, because the price is cheaper and I want more. But in economics, of course, we're going to actually analyze that idea of this downward sloping demand curve. Number one is something called the substitution effect. Okay. This is when people that would have bought something else will now buy the good or service because the price has dropped. Maybe there are some people that actually don't usually drink milk because they find that milk is not their favorite thing, but it might not be their favorite thing at $6 a gallon. But if milk all of a sudden went from $6 a gallon to $3 a gallon, you might actually say, oh, for $3 a gallon, I was buying this other thing, but now milk is too cheap to actually pass up. It might not be as good as the thing I usually get at $6 a gallon, but at the margin, this $3 I save is worth buying the milk. All right. And so a person or people go from something else they would have bought now that the price has dropped. Oh, okay. Now actually I don't like it at the higher price, but I like it at the lower price enough to buy. And this is known as the substitution effect. That's why we have a sloping downward demand curve. Number two is something called income effect. People will simply buy more of an item because they feel richer. Remember, the act of being rich and poor is not just because you get more or less money. The act of being rich and poor is also the price of the items rising up and down. So when prices start to drop, guess what? You're actually getting rich. You're getting richer than you already are. So maybe if you would have bought only 1 or 2 gallons of milk at $6, when that sucker goes down to three, all of a sudden you're like, I'll buy a few more. Obviously milk has an expiration date. Maybe you have a large family. So this is why when prices start to fall, people will not only just switch over and buy that item, but people that normally buy that item feel richer and they will buy more of that item because the price is lower, and that's known as the income effect. The last one is called diminishing marginal utility, meaning people will find more usefulness of an item only at a lower price. Now, normally, when people buy goods and services, they kind of relegate it to does it give me any kind of satisfaction at a certain price? And especially when a good or service is like a commodity, which is exactly the same, there's not a whole lot of difference. Things like lemons or fruits and vegetables are pretty much the same thing. Milk is also would be considered a commodity. Orange juice, oil. People will only find usefulness if that price goes down, because if I buy another gallon of milk, I'm basically buying the same thing. And if I paid $3 for a gallon of milk, and just the first glass of milk tastes really good, but the second glass of milk is not going to taste that much better. Then you're experiencing, every time you purchase something that's exactly the same, you're experiencing diminishing marginal utility. Now, what does that mean? That means diminishing is less, marginal is one extra unit. Utility in economics, super important. Utility is satisfaction. And remember that everybody goes and buys things. They commit demand, or the ideas of demand, because they want satisfaction, because a good or service is providing them with utility. Well, if I'm buying the same thing over and over and over again, I'm actually getting less utility every time I buy that one extra unit. We go back, let's do something other than milk. How about a donut? If you're starving, hungry, donuts and coffee, the first donut tastes fantastic, and then every donut you buy after eat after that is actually less and less and less satisfying. But if we took the first donut and we charged $4 for it and then started lowering the price of donuts the more you ate, you'd actually probably get a much more satisfaction because you're paying less and less for the donut. All right. So we have the downward sloping because people that wouldn't buy things would all of a sudden jump into the market and buy things that they wouldn't have otherwise. The substitution effect. Number two, downward sloping because when the price goes down, more people are actually going to consume more of the item. That is the income effect. A diminishing marginal utility. You wouldn't purchase more than one of the items because it doesn't give you that much satisfaction. But when the price actually starts to drop down, you find, okay, fine, it'll give me a little more satisfaction as the price drops. That is diminishing marginal utility. Okay. So remember this last thing law of demand is only a change in price of the item that we're talking about here in this market and only a change in price. Price goes up, quantity demand it goes down, price goes down, quantity demand it goes up, and it would be movement on the curve. There's no shifting at all. So whenever there is a change in price, it is quantity demanded and it is movement on the curve. On the curve. Price is on the curve.